Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Started out with my favorite love song because we're going to talk about love today. Because,
super romantic.
Right? Yes. It's so romantic. Because the world needs a little more love right now. All right, guys, I'm so excited for this. I have James Michael Sama. I'm going to talk all about relationships.
Can't wait.
Welcome. Tell everybody where they can follow you on social media.
Thank you, JJ. You can find me at James M. Sama. Everything I have is at James M. Sama. S-A-M-A is the last name. JamesMSama.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Come on, chat. Let's have a good conversation.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I've been secretly following you for a while because you're good friends of some other AfterBuzzers here and been on some other wonderful shows of ours.
Yeah.
But you always have the best, ladies, follow this guy because he's got great relationship tips, advice, little motivational quotes that you put up that we'll show a little later on, and just a great Instagram feed, blog, everything for those of us trying to struggle out here in the dating world.
Well, that's it. Everybody has some sort of challenges. You know what I mean? Nothing's perfect, and everybody thinks that they have the biggest challenge of them all, and then when you start hearing other people's stories, you're like, wow, nobody has it easy, you know?
That's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, especially amongst us girls, we all talk. I even went on a trip with one of my best friends from Nebraska. Now, middle of the country out here, but our stories, the things that we go through are so similar, and it does make you feel a little bit better that you have somebody else could not. Not that I wish her so much happiness,
Right,
but you know what I mean.
yeah.
But you realize once you start talking about it, like you realize how many people out there are experiencing similar things.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I literally have spent all day, every day for the past 5 years talking about this. So it's like I hear it from all different walks of life, all different ages, locations. I mean, men and women have issues. It's all over the place.
Okay, so today, congratulations, because
Thank
you are
you.
now an author.
Officially.
Yes. So show your book.
I have.
Yes.
For the first time ever, I actually have a physical book, something to show
That's
with with work in it. So thank you. I appreciate it. It's unlocking love.
How did that feel the first time you touched that book you got in your hands?
It was funny story. Because I ordered a bunch of them from the printer because I had a bunch of people that wanted signed copies, like pre-orders. So, but what happened was a lot of people started ordering it off Amazon. So they were receiving it before I got my copies. So I was I was like, oh my God, people are getting this before I've even seen it. So I was looking at it, and so I had a kind of a concept of what it looked like, So I was like, oh, when I get it, it'll be fine. It's like you're seeing something in a picture and then you're holding it, no big deal. And then I got it and I opened up the box and I was like, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
It really does. It is this kind of I guess sense of satisfaction, you could say, that you're holding it and you're like, wow, I created this,
What did you do? Anything? Did you smell it? Did you?
I've held on. I pretty much
it.
held on to it the whole day. I was like, this isn't going anywhere,
Yeah.
And but that's the thing. I wanted it to feel good. I wanted it to for somebody to get it in their hand and really has substance to it,
Yeah.
So it's something that you can really hold on to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Such a great accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah, it's getting there. It's certainly now. It's just time to spread the word.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's what we're going to talk about. So so we let people get to know you more. Let's go back 5 years ago, or when this first began for you. Maybe it was even before that. When did you have this idea? Hey, you know what? I want to talk about relationships. I have something to say. How did you make that transition?
Good question. It really started. I was always very observant when it came to relationships and things like that. My parents have always been very old-fashioned. They still are very romantic with each other, to the point where I'm like, Dad, and I'm kind of cheesy romantic too, but he's still is 36, 37 years later with my mom, So when I grew up, that's always what I saw. So for me, that was normal. I was like, this is how relationships are. And then when I started dating in high school or whenever I kind of tried to get into it, it didn't go so well. So I was like, this isn't really what women want. But at the same time, I noticed that everybody was kind of frustrated. Nobody was having these solid relationships. So I saw this disconnect, and I'm like, maybe this is the right way to do it, but nobody's doing it that way, whatever. So I, fast forward a bunch of years, and I grew up and I learned different things about different people or whatever, and how dynamics work socially with relationships. And I was like, something's missing here. People are not happy. And I just started basically writing down stuff on Facebook, different Facebook statuses, and they got a lot of feedback. And I was like, well, I want to reach more people. I want to write longer things. So I started a blog. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'll get a free WordPress blog. I'll name it after myself. No branding, nothing. And about 5 months after I started writing, I was getting 3,000 or 4,000 views per day on the blog, which I thought was enormous. And I literally went from like 5,000, it was like 4,900 on a Tuesday. That same Friday, I was over 1.5 million people in a day
Wow.
that was reading the blog.
What was there a certain blog you posted? Okay, yeah, let's hear this.
So the article, it was called 10 Ways to Know You're Dating a True Gentleman. So it was like, it was the concept of how I felt that guys should act in relationships. So, I mean, the whole thing for me at the time was about like motivation, confidence, stuff like that. It wasn't just focused on dating. So for me, it was like, this is how we can be better as guys, as men in general in life, and what I was surprised by is that guys didn't want to hear it. They're like, screw this guy telling us what to do. Like, screw this. But all the women were like, finally a guy is standing up and saying this stuff. So the readership has been like 90% women for years.
So you think girls were spreading that around then
Totally.
to other girls and passing it?
Totally.
Yeah.
Or their boyfriends.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you said in that?
I
article?
talked a lot about like valuing people more than just their looks, because we're in this like image-centric society. Even a few years ago, it was all about, even when it was all about like MySpace and different things, it was all about image and how you could perceive somebody, But obviously that doesn't make for a solid relationship. So I talked about like, valuing you more than your looks, being chivalrous on dates, like romantic, like calling instead of texting for a date, which now I've evolved past because people just don't pick up the phone. So it's like, there were kind of like nothing. The ironic thing about it is it's nothing like super revolutionary. It's common sense stuff that nobody's talking about.
So in your book, you talked about you kind of did your own research and development for these things, advice you can give.
Yeah.
So talk about kind of some of your own evolution of dating.
Oh boy. Well, I definitely went through phases. And I'm open about that. I was not always and I'm certainly not the quintessential gentleman now. I have we're all progressing at the same time, that's why I don't claim to be some sort of expert or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, because, when I kind of came out of high school, I lost a lot of weight. I kind of gained my confidence a little bit. I started going out to nightclubs for like the first time. I never drank till I was 21. I never even tasted alcohol till I was 21. I was very like kind of, stayed in my lane. So when I started to kind of get out there and experience the world, I was like, I can do whatever I want to do,
Yeah.
And so I kind of went off the deep end for like most of my 20s. I did a lot of club promoting and nightlife in Boston, and went to New York to party, went to Miami to party. I kind of did all that stuff. So I obviously wasn't looking for a commitment. So I was a much different type of guy. But through that process, you learn about social interactions. You learn what attracts people. You learn what gets attention and what doesn't, So there's a lot of kind of personal experience that went into this. And, it's mostly about like developing that confidence within yourself, and then bringing it to a relationship. But it's like, I went through that whole, overweight phase, unpopular phase, never getting any dates to dances, things like that. So it's like, how do you come out of that as a confident, stronger person? And that's what I tried to put into the book.
That's great. So you had the blog, and then but you also in the book, but you also are a speaker as well.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
how did that evolve, and who are some groups that you've spoken to?
So that evolved. It mostly evolved when the blog went completely viral, because I started getting calls from like radio stations and TV stations or live events that were like, which was so crazy, because here I was again, just some kid who had like written a bunch of stuff down on the internet, and I'm like, what is happening? All these people are calling me for this stuff, And as I started doing these interviews, like even just phone calls for radio stations, I was like, I like doing this. Like I had never really done that before. I took like a public speaking class in college as an elective, but I never thought it would be a thing I would do, and if I had known then, I could have really focused on it. But I was like, I really enjoyed it so much that I started getting kind of just calls to do, like I went down to Orlando and spoke at a fraternity that was all about chivalry. I've done a bunch of different talk shows. I was on Fox News to promote like a live panel event I was doing in Boston. I've traveled around and done a bunch of those. I just did one in Hollywood a few weeks ago. It's like I've done so many different, things that I've bounced around to. It's a kind of a cool path that it's taken me on,
I read about the frat one. So what were some of the things that you told the frat guys?
Well, that was actually a really interesting conversation, because I thought it was going to be a group of guys, college guys, but there were a lot of girls that came to the thing too. So it was really about like, because they're on this big campus in the University of Central Florida, which is like 60,000 students. It's the biggest campus I think in the country. So a date to them is pretty much non-existent. Like they just live within that ecosystem. So for me to go down there and be like, hey guys, put in effort and take women on dates, it was like the room would erupt and like the girls would be like, yeah, and the guys would be like, no way. You know, it was a very like dynamic conversation.
Yeah.
You know? So it was cool. It was cool. But things like that are great because you get a lot of feedback.
And then you've also done like almost private coaching for people, or like tips for people?
I do, yeah. I do private coaching. I don't you know, it's an interesting, and I'm saying this publicly now. Typically I don't say it publicly, but like I never got into the whole like life coach thing, right? I'm not like a certified life coach. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. The dating coach thing, I think has gotten a bad rap in the media or whatever, so I never really put myself out there as a dating coach. But I've had so many people reach out to me for like one-on-one advice that I was like, I need to, you know, I can't give all these people the full attention just in my spare time. So I need to figure out a way to make it more efficient. So I do take on one-on-one clients now and then, and just, you know, give my advice and give my opinions, you know?
What would you say? So what's one of the biggest questions people come to you with?
People can't find, and every time I say something, it's always like, guys are like, stop blaming the guys. But the biggest thing that I get is women telling me that men don't want to put in any effort. So it's like, where do I find guys who actually want to put in effort? And men are like, why should we put in effort? You know, that whole just commitment to actually building a relationship seems to be so hard to find. I mean, maybe you experience that too, but it's like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. What's your feeling on like dating apps and how that's changed the game and stuff as well?
It's, I think the dating apps have, because some people are blaming the apps for basically taking away our attention span and just making it kind of like a menu swiping thing, right? But I think what happened was the apps have actually just taken human nature, because whether or not we like to, and I think I said this in the book.
You do, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like judging a book by its cover, you know? I said that in the book too. And it's like, we don't like to admit it, but we judge people. You know, and it's like somebody has to say it and be honest with it so we can actually acknowledge it. Like we judge people immediately just by human nature. You can have, I mean, if you're out with a group of friends and you see a guy coming over to you at the bar, I mean, you instantly know if you're going to try to like get your friends to shield you or if you're going to kind of open up to them. Like, right? Am I right? Or,
yeah.
And every once in a while I say something and I'm like, I have to make sure I'm right about that. But yeah, right?
Yeah, girls, yeah, we do.
You pretty much know
right
off the
away,
bat, right? And like, and as a guy, you'd walk into a bar and immediately be able to spot the women that you want to talk to. Immediately, you know nothing about them. You know nothing about that guy. You know, so it's already in our nature to be quickly judgmental. So I think all the apps have done is basically capitalize on that and say this is how people are. So we're going to give them an avenue to just indulge in how they are naturally. So you sit there and you swipe. It's no different than just going to the bar and saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So I think it gives us an opportunity to cycle through a lot more people quickly. The problem is people stay in that ecosystem. They don't actually get off there to meet people, you know what I mean, in person. It's like they just use that as their entire playground and never migrate off it. I think that's where the problem comes in.
But do you think it also makes it seem like, so if you were just going out to the bars, like you got to hit a lot of bars, right, to see that amount of people.
Right.
So there's also not this feeling of like, oh, the next good one, the better one's going to come along. You know, like, do you think it also makes people feel like, oh, there's just another one, a better one out there. I'm just going to keep searching a little bit.
I think you're definitely right. Yeah. It's which comes down to, I think, the whole thing with building relationships again, because it's like if you find somebody that you really connect with, that you click with, right? Like you stop having that feeling of the grass is always greener, because you're like, I have somebody here who I appreciate. And you can go out in Hollywood, you can go out around the most beautiful people and not be fazed by it because you're happy with the person that you have. Not because of how they look, but because of who they are. Right? So it's like staying on the apps prevents that from happening because it doesn't allow that real connection to form. You know?
So how would you recommend for people to who are looking for love out there? What are your good approaches? I know you talk about some in the book.
I do.
So let's
I mean,
see where
yeah.
you had to
Well,
say.
I mean, it's you know, I think it also depends if it's men or women. You know, because go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, I definitely no. You go. You finish first.
Okay.
I'll follow up. What was I gonna say?
I mean, I think that there's, you know, it's always interesting to me because anytime I talk about like being chivalrous and being, you know, romantic, guys are always like, women don't want that. Women don't want that. And I literally can.
Yes, we do.
Right?
Yeah.
I can like point to my Facebook page and be like, there's 144,000 people on this Facebook page. 90% of them are women, and they're all saying this is what we want. It's not rocket science. It's not like I'm giving you my opinion here. I'm like, you have women right here telling you. So for the guys, I really encourage people to like actually take a little bit of time, get to know the woman, like put in effort. Like if you're going to go on a first date, it's not just like, you need to get to know a little bit about her first and like plan something accordingly. If you're going to be serious about her, put in the effort, you know what I mean? But I also think women need to be open to that. And, you know, a lot of times guys do try and women kind of reject them, and guys take it personally, where it's like, it wasn't a fit, man, move on. You know what I mean? So it is playing the lottery. You have to lose a lot before you win.
And I definitely see both sides struggles on this one.
And that's the thing. And it's and so many people, there's a lack of communication. But that's the other thing I've tried to open up, like everybody talking to each other, because it's like men will complain to men about women, and women will complain to women about men, and you have these silos of each other, and nobody ever expresses their concerns. You know what I mean? So it never gets solved. It never moves forward.
What of the guys that reach out to you, what are things they're asking?
Most of them are like, there's not a lot of guys, honestly. There's really not. But you do get guys that are burned and need to kind of get back out there, and most of the guys are basically looking for kind of like the fortitude to basically risk rejection again. You know, because for guys, it's like it's an ego. It's like a damaging thing to your ego to go out there and get rejected, and to, you know, approach women. And I don't think we don't talk about that enough, because women are like, and I've heard a lot of women say, oh, well, if the guy doesn't have the balls to approach me, I don't want to be with a guy like that anyway. I'm like, do you understand how difficult this is? You know?
Yeah.
So a lot of the guys need that kind of like strength to be able to actually go out there and meet people. It's tough for them.
I definitely feel for guys, the fact that they're expected to be able to make the first move and then say something, and you know. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
And speaking of dating apps, I mean, I have a client, I was just talking to her yesterday on the phone, and she was like, she's on Bumble. And I mean, you know, Bumble, it's like the woman has to make the first move, has to send the first message. She's like, I don't like it. It's a lot of pressure trying to figure out what to say. I'm like, yeah, welcome to our world, you know?
I've been on that one, and I totally agree with her. It's like,
right?
Trying to think of something clever.
Yeah. Something to get a response. It's tough.
I get on, and then I get right back off.
And that's the thing, too. It's like, it's a hassle, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
You know?
It is, yeah. Yeah. So I definitely, out of your book, I fell into one, I fell into you had number 6 was have high standards for where you spend your time and the people with who you spend it with. Okay. And then he says, get off your ass. Mr. Right isn't going to fall out of the ceiling of your office cubicle.
Yes.
So that is me and a bunch of the girls that I know. We all work so much, and we literally like work, come home with my dog, get up, do the same, you know, same thing, because I'm juggling a couple jobs, and so then it's I definitely do that. And when you say like, okay, I don't really like the apps, so it's like for meeting people, you suggested like making plans,
going. Well, first of all, going anywhere. I mean, it's like, because a lot of times, and this might be the chapter where I go through like the hypothetical conversation. I'm like, okay, what does your day-to-day look like? And so you said basically like either you go to the gym in the morning, or you just go to work, and then before you know it, you're back home again. So it's like, you may be referring to the restaurant thing for lunch, maybe.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah. And you know, this was something every once in a while, like I'll come out with something random, like even talking to a client or whatever, because that's when like my mind is going, and I'm like, oh, I like that idea, you know, and I run with it. And essentially what I suggested was, as you're referring to in the book, like even if you're at work, I mean, you have to have lunch, you have to eat, right? I mean, it's a legality that you have to. I know sometimes it's hard to like go out or leave your desk or whatever.
Yeah, that's what's hard too. It's even hard for me to get like out of the building, and I usually eat lunch at my desk.
Do you go to Starbucks in the morning or anything?
I do. Well, I work out in the morning, so sometimes I go to Coffee Bean in the early in the morning. Yeah.
So you're probably not the only person in there, right?
Correct, but it's early, so not too many people in there.
Right, but the people that you do see in there, you know, have a similar lifestyle to them. They have a similar path as you. Like, they're up early for a reason, whether it's for work or the gym or whatever. So that's a good thing. So you're already weeding out, like, if you have somebody who's in there at 1 PM, just moseying in, because they just woke up, that might not be somebody who's good for you anyway, right?
True, yeah.
So it's like, so you're in the right place at the right time. It's about the quality. It's not about the quantity, you know? But the suggestion that I made with this was basically like, I was literally talking to a client, and she moved to a new place. It was like Kentucky or Kansas or something. Not a lot going on. And I was like, well, there's got to be restaurants around you that, you know, you haven't been before, right? Like pick a day of the week, say every Tuesday, I'm going to get up and go to lunch at a new restaurant I've never been. And like sit at the bar and just either talk to the bartender, talk to somebody next to you, like anything to get out and interact with people. You know, because it's like, it's no surprise that you don't meet new, not you, but in general, right? Like when
Yeah,
you really
totally.
break down your day,
Yeah.
it's no surprise sometimes that you're not meeting new people.
No, definitely. And I feel like I see some of the cutest ones out here in LA when you're driving in your car. And I always felt like they needed like some little like number you could flash up. You know, just kidding.
Hey,
But
you never know.
it's like,
You never know what might happen.
because you had another thing where you're sitting in, and I do this where you said sit in traffic sometime and try to like smile at somebody next to you. And I think it's different in other parts of the country, but definitely out here in LA, people aren't open to that. And they do just like kind of ignore you or just kind of look at, you know, like it's hard to get people to kind of interact. And I think even like just walking down the street, like I'm from Nebraska, and so there it's really actually kind of rude if you walk past somebody and you don't make eye contact or say hi.
Right.
It's kind of like you definitely have a problem, you know.
Yeah.
But here I try that and people look at me like I'm nuts, you know.
It's
Like,
interesting. It's weird because I've actually found to be like relatively open here.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I can see where, you know, 'cause regardless of where you are, I mean, people are going throughout their day, and it's like I think they need that. They need to be kind of jolted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even I'm not saying like run up to somebody, but you know, just people need to kind of break out of that. That's why nobody's connecting anymore. You know,
Yeah.
they're just allowing themselves to stay in that just perpetual state of like staring at the. That's why there's so much art on the ground now. Have you noticed all the graffiti on the ground?
Yep.
Because people know you're just staring at your
Just
phone,
looking.
and that's where it's going to be. You know,
Yeah.
which is. It's a smart move, but it's a little sad to think nobody's even looking around anymore, you know?
Yeah, it's true. I know we are all like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk more about the book.
Sure, yeah.
So, any particular, any favorite chapter in there, or anything, or just in general, anything that you love most about this book?
You know, the thing that stands out the most when you say that is like the analogy with the Christmas tree. Because it's like, and I do speak in analogies all the time, which I say in the book too. And I'm like, I don't know where it comes from, but I'll make these random just comparisons. And the whole thing with the Christmas tree is, I really compared it to like developing your own happiness, which is really the core of the book in the first place. You know what I mean? And the core of any relationship, I think, is developing this confidence in yourself. But like the comparison I make, which you may recall on the tree, is like, and I'll say it for everybody watching, is like, you know, when you're putting up a Christmas tree, if you ever have, maybe you haven't, but you can imagine if you were, you don't decorate it before you put it up, right? Because the ornaments will be all over the floor, it's a mess, and then when you try to stand up, it's gonna be all over the place. So like the pretty stuff, the decorative stuff, the things that are, you know, froofy or whatever, come at the end. But in the beginning, it's this pain in the ass process where you have to lift the thing up, you get dirty, it's a challenge, you know what I mean? You might have to do it a couple times, you might have to call somebody to help you for support or whatever. And like that is the piece of the puzzle that's you creating your own happiness, you know, you standing yourself up in a sturdy position before you worry about all the extras, you know. And most people are going to come over when it's already up and decorated and see you or the tree in your final form, and they're not going to know about, you know, that 6 a.m. gym session. They're not going to know about, you know, all these late nights and the struggles and all those things, like what it took you to get that tree up, you know. So it's like, but the people that do know are the people that you can count on, you know. And I think that kind of like, I don't know. I just for some reason I like that section. You know, I don't know. It stands out when you say that.
Yeah, it definitely stood out with me too when I read it. I had great. It was good imagery. You know.
I try to make it like vibrant. You know.
Let me see what, because I wrote your chapters here. Yeah, recognize your own self-worth. Oh, how about talk about the defining your happiness, being the master of your own happiness, and having a conceptual vision of the partner you're looking for.
I think that's so important because it's like, and I mentioned there too, I know some people who are like, write down the things that you want in a partner. And I'm like, well, you could do that, but I think a lot of people get stuck in the trap of like, if you don't check off a certain amount of things on the list or whatever, they write you off. When in reality, like this person as a human being with all these different unique aspects could be great for you. You know, but like they're not 6'1" or whatever, so that you write them off. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think conceptually you can have things that are hard to quantify. Like you can say, I want somebody who's like genuine or kind-hearted or passionate. Like what does that mean? You can't put like a quantity on it. You can't put a number on it, but you can feel it. You know what I mean? You can experience it with somebody. So like I think there's a conceptual vision that we can have of the person. Like I would like them to act this way around family. I would like them to be this way if we're on the couch. I mean, I dated a woman who was like would sit on the other couch when we watch a movie, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like you need to. So you learn over time, of course, what you do and what you don't like, and you form this kind of vision of I think the type of person that you want to be with, based on that experience.
Yeah, I like that section a lot just because I thought, because it's taken me years to kind of get clear on that. Because you also talk in the book too about sometimes when we all have done this, most of us, like stayed too long in something as well too, that you talk about seeing the red flags.
Yeah.
And you just kind of ignore some things thinking like, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
ultimately, I feel like every time I've seen that red flag, like maybe month 2, and then I stick around, like, you know, then it all comes back to that I saw way back.
Right,
like
right.
one of your, was it you in there that talked about being rude to waiters?
Yes.
Yeah, like, that was one for me that, like, it just bothered me so much.
Yeah.
And then it bothered me every single time, like, we went to eat, and I was like,
Yeah.
I should have just, you know, but, so, yeah, can you elaborate more on those type of things?
Yeah, well, it's like that, you know, because it's everybody talks about like what you want, what's going to make you happy, what do you want in a person, right? It's like it's equally as important to define those things that are deal breakers. You know, that like being rude to the waiter isn't just about being rude to the waiter. It's about like being inconsiderate to certain people that aren't you. Like, of course, especially if you're in the beginning stages, whether it's a man or a woman, they're going to be good to you. They're going to be like on their best behavior because they're trying to win you over. Right. So it's like, yes, pay attention to that, but also pay attention to the people they're not trying to win over. Like, how are they treating everybody around them? Because that's where their nature comes out. You know, like what are their friends like? What are the people that they spend their time with? Like looking at this person as like a whole ecosystem around them and not just like how they are one-on-one with you, you know? And like you said, those little things, sometimes they turn into big things in the long run.
Yeah.
But if you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, but then 5 or 6 months in, you're like, yeah, I can't really deal with that. So defining that and recognizing it in the beginning, I think can save people a lot of time, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying like you see one little thing and run away.
Right.
But, you know, if it's something that's consistent that you've experienced in the past that you know is going to be just too much for you, then we're not 15 years old hiding under the bleachers anymore. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, if it's not going to work, what's the point? You know, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and I agree when I read the part about watching how they interact with everyone. That for me, that's beyond looks and everything. That's one of the most attractive things in a guy to me is, I mean, how do they treat their family? How do they treat their friend? How do they treat, like you said, somebody that they don't know, that they just, you know, and I don't know, the people that are kindness, I guess, is huge for me.
Well, I think it's, you know, if you're gonna be with somebody, and we all want something different out of relationships, and, you know, I'm not one of those like this is the end goal thing. Like, it's all about what you want as an individual. But for somebody who wants, like, because I do talk to a lot of people who want a marriage or who at least want like a long-term relationship or whatever, that person is going to be around everybody that you know. You know what I mean? That's like your family, your friends. If you raise a kid together, like, who knows? So, I mean, they need to be, you need to know that they're going to be kind to everyone. You know, you can't worry about bringing them to like a company function and be like, what's Steve going to say now? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not, but I don't think that we're looking that far into the future anymore. Like, people are just like, they're attractive, they're into me, I'm going to start dating them. And then you're in this cycle with somebody who's not right for you, but you keep going down that same path. Because you're like, well, now I've invested this much into it, and you're screwed. You know what I mean? It's an unfortunate circumstance, but it happens a lot.
Thoughts for people out there who, oh man, the time is going so fast and there's so many questions.
Ridiculous. I know. You have to stop me because I tend to ramble.
No, I love it. I love it because I want to hear. I'm trying to think. So what about people ask you about your thoughts on like casual dating, or people who are like, well, maybe I'm not going to find the one, so maybe I just need to date casually.
I think as long as you're open about like that's what you're doing, it's, for me, it's like, I've got, you know, a lot of people see me as this like old fashioned like chivalry, throw your jacket down in the puddle, and I'm like, listen, man, you want to sleep together on the first date, sleep together on the first date. It's do whatever. If you're two consenting adults who make decisions based on what's best for you, then that's what's best for you. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you want to go out and like hook up with a bunch of people, if you want to go out and be casual, if you're not looking for that long term, do whatever's best for you. There's no rule book. However, just don't mislead people is my whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, if you go into a situation, you say, listen, I'm not really looking for anything committed. I'm just kind of casually dating right now, seeing what happens. And the man or woman you're dating is like, hey, me too. Great. You know what I mean? I just think the problem arises when it's like you're misrepresenting what you're looking for.
Yeah, of course. You know? That led me to actually a question I had, because I said, what are your thoughts on other dating notions people have, like waiting certain number of days, like Steve Harvey's, you got to think like a man, and just the other schools of thought. What do you think on those?
I think they cause more problems than they solve, honestly. And
you
I
get
think
too in your head too.
yeah, because you're like you start to like try to calculate the whole thing when it just doesn't. You know, it's like send these 5 texts to get him to fall in love with you. It's like, oh, come on, man. You know, like I know people. It's a $1 billion industry off that stuff, which it's fine. But I mean, like the reason why I did this and the reason why I write even the articles I write is like start from the foundation of you know, do what feels right, like develop all these, again, conceptual things, and stop worrying about like the little calculated minutia. Like people aren't science experiments, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like the whole like 3-day rule, like don't call it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if I went on a date with somebody and they didn't call me or text me for 3 days, I'd be like, holy shit, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? Like I'm never gonna hear from this person. Yeah. It's like there's a line between playing it cool and just seeming like disinterested. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's, I don't know. I think it does too much damage. Yeah. Honestly, do what feels right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like if it's going to be right and you're both feeling that connection, that you won't be caught up in all that kind of stuff.
And I mean, it's, and yeah, and there's not going to be games, you know what I mean? And like, it's one thing to want to make sure that you're doing it right. You know what I mean? Like some guys are like, oh, like I think it can be a good sign if they're like really paying attention to what they're doing, because like they don't want to mess it up. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're not just like being all willy-nilly about it, and they're like actually like, oh, maybe I should wait a little longer because like I really like her. But when it gets in your head and makes it unnatural, because then you're not learning really about each other as a person, because they're just trying to follow a rule book. Right. You know.
Sounds good. All right. I asked you that. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making? Mistakes in your eyes, or?
That's a good question. Boy, that's a good question. Mistakes that I see people making. You know, I think, and I might have to come at this from like, again, like a conceptual standpoint instead of like an actual like act or a lack of an act. I think the biggest mistake that people are making, and this probably isn't a direct answer to your question, it's that they think they're gonna find happiness in this world of fleeting satisfaction. You know, I think the mistake is approaching dating from such like a quick, impulsive standpoint that doesn't have any substance to it. And I think that in itself is causing all sorts of other mistakes that stem off it from the beginning. But if you're not going into something actually believing that it could be real, it could be a good, solid foundation for a relationship, then it's never going to evolve because you don't even think it's possible. So I think that starting point is the biggest mistake that people are making.
So you think somehow people are already going into things like...
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Because it's like people are jaded. You know, you can scroll through Facebook for 10 minutes and all you see is everybody complaining about everybody else, right? It's like, and then what are you gonna, you know what I mean? Like women are always posting up screenshots of guys hitting on them, like, look at this creep. So guys are gonna be like, I'm not doing any of that. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna get called out on social media for calling somebody beautiful. Yeah. So it's like, it's creating all this conflict that doesn't need to be there. Yeah. You know, it's just turning people off before they even get started.
It's a tough time in the social media world. Like it was so much easier when it was like you had the phone, because I think also it's harder. Like on the phone, you knew where you stood by. You can figure out so much more by the tone of somebody's voice, by what they're actually saying to you, whatever, than versus just trying to like decipher the text and like, well, you know, what did he mean by this, or what, you know, So I feel like that also makes us get more in our heads too, trying to.
You're totally right, because you read the text and then you're like, what does that mean? Yeah. You know, and then you hold on to it for like 3 hours and you're like, I don't know how to respond. When in reality, like they were just doing something quick or whatever, and they just responded to you, and it's no big deal. But you're right. I mean, our parents and grandparents, I mean, when they were growing up, it's like they'd either write letters, talk on the phone for some of them, if they, you know, not our grandparents, but our parents, or see each other in person. Yeah. There was none of this existed. So this is the first time that we're actually trying to navigate this, you know? And it ain't easy.
Yeah, I miss that era, because like I come from divorced parents, but my grandparents were like your parents, and just like the best love story I've ever seen in my life, you know, and he was in the Navy and she followed him and all that stuff.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and just recently when my grandma passed away, I looked at the back of a lot of her photo albums that I had, and she was so cute because she would write on the back of all of those as well too, which was so fun for something for me to have. Right. And I think about that now too, even with our photos. It's like next generations are going to have like find something
Yeah.
like that, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, unless
yeah.
people are really good about printing them out and like, but who does that?
Yeah,
You
really,
know?
honestly, it's like
Yeah.
a pain. It's, people just don't want to have that clutter. They just swipe through it on the phone.
Right.
You know?
So I feel like that was just such a romantic era in time, you know?
There was so much of it that just had more, I don't know, just more substance. And like, it could get into an entire other episode about like the roles and stuff like that that people took on. Because these days, everybody's got to be equal and the same and everything. But like, if you had a role to play, you knew what your role was and you did that. And you had expectations and it seemed to work.
Yeah. You talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because it's like I have to walk a fine line because I am very progressive. I'm all about
Right.
equality. I'm all about like I call myself a feminist. I'm all about just like equal playing field. You know what I mean? I'm certainly not trying to go back to the time when like women had to stay in the kitchen. That's not my thing. But it's like opening the door, pulling out the chair, like pursuing a woman, picking her up for a date. Like I do still think that those things, those expectations that were set, guys had something to rise up and meet. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, if men feel like they have a purpose, if they feel like they have a mission, they do it. It's like it's a satisfaction thing. It's almost like an ego thing. They're like, I accomplished it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
if they have expectations that are set for them, they did it then. So now it's like if I can do it myself, I can do it myself, I can do it myself. Guys are like, well then what do I do?
Yeah.
And then they just don't do anything. And then nobody wins. You know?
And we complain and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a rough cycle.
It is. Let me ask. We have engineer Marissa in there.
Mm-hmm.
Marissa, any burning relationship question from you in there?
There's so many.
Aren't there always?
And James, I've seen you a few times here at AfterBuzz, and you tend to have a lot of good advice. But what do you find there's any difference of the generational type of dating? People from the 30s and 40s compared to the millennials now. Are the behaviors still the same of how people ask people out on regular dates, or do you find there's a great difference of how people approach if you're older compared to if you're younger?
Good question. And so can everybody hear that question, Marissa, too?
Yes.
Okay, so there's I think that between like texting and the apps and everything like that, there's been an enormous shift in how people are asking each other out on dates, in the sense that we're not asking on dates anymore. It's not like, let's go get a soda pop or a frap or something. It's like, hey, you want to come over and chill? Like, you want to Netflix and chill? Like, come over and watch a movie. There's no like courtship. There's no process to it. You know what I mean? Like, even our parents or grandparents, I mean, you'd go out to dinner, you'd go out to like a dance, you'd do something that was social, and there was like like building blocks of this communication that they would form a relationship and do that. These days, it's just like, there's no, and maybe it's because there's no expectations, or there's no structure, or there's no, but it's just like, it's just a free for all now, and those generations, like the 30s and 40s, and that's what I was talking about too, like there were expectations. Like if you were the guy, you had a role to play. Like you were doing this and pursuing a woman and asking her father for permission, and like, not saying we should do that, but it's like these things were norms that we knew to follow. Now it's like, and people are accepting it. And so if you can get away with putting in less and less effort, you're going to put in less and less effort. And it's like, that's the unfortunate cycle that I think things are going into. It's just kind of like people are like, well, I got to take what I can get.
How much of it too is location? Like think about back in the day when they were dating. It was either you probably knew somebody of the family or
Right,
the school or whatever. So if you were an asshole, like it was gonna get around like
Yeah,
pretty quickly
yeah,
too,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you asked a girl out and then you didn't show up on the date at the drive-in or
right,
whatever it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
it's gonna get around,
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like now, like, because I've been stood up on a social dating app too, where they didn't follow, like, luckily I didn't get there, but it's like I feel like it's just easier to do that because
Yeah.
it's like I had no idea who the person was, like didn't even know his full name, didn't
Right.
whatever, and to be honest, I didn't really even care because I had my whole day, but it was like I just feel like
Yeah.
that's the mentality now, though. It's like, whatever, something else came up, never talk to that person again,
It's a really good point. It's disposable.
Yeah.
It's disposable. That's a really good point. And I think like I always feel like all these things can kind of all come down to the same, like come back to the same starting point, because exactly what you're saying there. If you got to know somebody and like valued them and saw them as a human being, you're not gonna do that to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you see somebody as like you talk to them for 5 seconds on a dating app,
Right.
you might feel a little bad about it, but
But not too much.
right.
Yeah.
But like if you knew somebody or your parents introduced you or
Yeah.
whatever, you're not gonna like just stand them up randomly. You wouldn't think.
Yeah.
And that's I started watching Stranger Things last night on Netflix with my
good.
girlfriend. I had never. She's like season 2's coming out. You have to. I'd never seen it. And there's a scene in the first like second or third episode or whatever where like the sheriff goes into the library with one of his deputies or whatever, and the librarian called him out for like standing her up or not like, and I'm like, oh man, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's like if you're in that little town, you're held accountable for it.
Yeah.
You know, now it's just you're right. Or if you're on Bumble and that person's 30 miles away, oof,
Yeah, exactly.
you're never gonna see them.
Yeah.
So you're right, no accountability.
All right, we're almost out of time, and I
it's
do what I want to
crazy.
do. I
It's
know
like-
we do. I do want to play a speed dating quick game with you.
Oh,
I like
boy,
to
okay.
do just questions, quick questions.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
pass on any that you want, but before we get there, each week I do on TomGirl do a TomGirl of the week. This week on TomGirl of the week, because of everything that's been going on again in this world, I'm going to make it for all women who have ever been sexually harassed or assaulted, or even those who have not. All women, anybody that did the hashtag #MeToo, everybody out there, because it's time for this to stop. So those are all my TomGirls of the week.
Good call.
All right,
Awesome.
back to some fun. Speed dating round. Questions for you.
Oh boy.
Okay.
No pressure.
Your worst date ever.
Wow, that's a good question. Worst date ever. I might have to pass.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
I feel like that'd be a good one to answer, but I don't think I can come up with it right now. Damn.
If you think you can come
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Okay. Best single line of dating advice. Just one money line.
Define what it is that you deserve and stop settling for less than it. That's like encompasses everything. That's
What you personally look for in a partner.
Genuine, caring, affectionate, like physically affectionate. I'm like very touchy. Somebody who's humorous, ambitious, supportive, family oriented. Likes to have a balance of like I can just hang out on the couch and sit around and watch movies, and also get dressed up and like go to a nice event. Somebody who's versatile.
Cool. Favorite date.
In general or in the past, like an actual date that I've been on?
Either one. Either place you like to go, or like one date that you were like, oh, this was the best date ever.
I love like new experiences where you can enjoy an atmosphere together with somebody. And, like I'd say the best date that I probably have had, especially in the recent past, has been like went out for like to a sushi place on Sunset Boulevard. It was like just kind of nice, cozy, calm, quiet. You know what I mean? Went out for drinks afterwards, to somewhere a little bit more higher energy. And then we just like drove around Hollywood, went up to like Mulholland Drive and parked there and looked out on LA for like hours and just talked about stuff. And that was like such a combination of experiences you share with somebody within a few hours. I think it gives you a whole different vision of who they are and who you are too.
Yeah, and nice kind of not just sitting in the restaurant talking. Like sitting
Yeah,
out
it's
and,
too much like an interview. This
Yeah.
gives you like an opportunity to see them in different atmospheres.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cool. All right. This kind of goes back to our theme song tonight. The best song to get it onto.
Oh man. So okay, this might sound a little bit cheesy, but if you put on the 50 Shades of Grey Pandora station, it's like a stream
not
of just
surprising.
everything that's like everything you need. I don't think I could pick one, but it's like there's some good, like that's pretty much just a whole stream of like of the right stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
And then place to go with that.
I'm kind of like a traditional bedroom dude, I have to say. I'm kind of like, I wouldn't complain about, kitchen counter or something, but it's like for the most part, like I could go into a lot of detail why, but there's just, you have a little bit more space to work with,
New playing field.
creativity. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to kind of focus on what's important instead of like trying to keep your balance on like a flagpole or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Any most embarrassing dating moment?
I'd say the first 20 years of my life. It's pretty much just a series of like being turned down for dates, and most embarrassing dating moment. I haven't thought about this in like decades, literally. But now that you bring that up, oh my god! 'Cause when I was in like middle school, it was like the cool thing to do was have somebody else ask out a girl for
Yep.
you, right? It was like, hey, will you go out with him? And I think it was like I think it was like two girls in the same, and I'm saying girls, I get flack for saying girls instead of women, but they were in like 8th grade, they were girls. Like 2 girls in the same day like rejected me. Cuz like my buddy came back and he's like, "Sorry." I'm like, "Well, what about her?" And then like he went and asked, and it was like, and I was like,
Well, the second one may have known that you already asked the first one.
She probably saw it
The girls-
happen.
yeah.
I was clueless. I have no idea. But that was my entire first 18 years was just a shit show.
Anybody that now that you're like the guru, anybody from the past reached out that
a couple of, well, kind of. I had there was somebody in high school that was one of the cool girls or whatever that we never even talked in high school. And then actually, I mean, we were together for a little while, maybe 2-3 years ago. She reached out again, and we never even talked in high school. And then we started talking for the first time then, as I was now an adult, I guess, kind of. And we dated for a while.
Yeah,
it was kind of fun.
nice.
Yeah. But besides that, it's some of it I don't.
chapters closed.
Yeah,
Yep.
Kind of done.
That's amazing. All right, any last things from you that you want to say before we wrap up tonight?
Good question. I think this whole thing is not even just the book, the entire concept of dating and relationships. I think we've gone so far off the rails of trying to create this image that we're trying to live in, you know what I mean? And who's going to look best in our selfies, that we're not actually creating something that has substance and depth. And I think that the biggest misconception, or the biggest thing that we're overlooking, is the fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness that can come from that. And it's I think people don't understand that, so they just think that they're going to go out and find this, have some fun and find this fulfillment or whatever, I did in my early 20s. I was this is great, it's fun, I'm going out and meeting a lot of women or whatever. It gets boring, it gets old, and you're there's no substance, there's no fulfillment, because you're not building something with somebody who really cares about you, So I think that if we can go back to understanding how important that is, then we're going to treat each other differently, we're going to treat ourselves differently, we're going to stop accepting all the BS from everyone, and we're going to build happier, healthier relationships. And people in happy, healthy relationships don't go around hurting other people either. So it's a win-win for everybody,
Yeah. Very good point. That reminded me too, you talk about substance. I did want to point to a couple quotes. Do we have the quotes, Marissa?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So this is one you had. If you think you need to be in a relationship in order to be complete, you will always be looking for something you can never find. True fulfillment and satisfaction comes from within, and you cannot fully effectively give yourself to someone until you've found it. So I just want to tell everybody to follow the Instagram. We'll have a few more, but because they're just, You read this one.
Yeah, don't let the heart that didn't love you keep you from the one that will.
Yeah.
That one, I mean, some of these, the first one was original one from my podcast that I did. Some of these I find around scattered. They don't have sources on them. I wish they did. Yeah, this is mine too. Anything that I brand with me. Yeah. A life is something you create for yourself. It is something you decide on and take action on. It is something that you have to choose, I think, or take
consciously.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard. We got small font up here.
No, that's okay. It's mine. I should know what it says. And consciously take control of it every single day. If you don't, it's going to rule you. It's going to steal stifle your progress. Thank you. It's going to rob you of your happiness like a thief in the night. It's basically really take control of your own life. You know what I mean? Decide what you want and go for it. Stop letting it happen around you. Yeah. And that's from the book. That's directly from the book.
Yeah, so many great tidbits, things in the book, and then online, your blog posts, everything. So, guys, I really recommend you go. You follow him. You're going to enjoy it. And it's just little, the Instagram I like, because it's just little, I mean, I like it all, but they're quick little, motivational thing that can really, just get you through your day, or just put a smile on your face. So really check him out. It's amazing. Tell everybody again where they can follow you on all forms of social media.
Yes, find me at James M. Sama. Everything's at James M. Sama. I have the link to the book in there. You can also go to unlockinglovebook.com and grab a copy of this.
And where, I'm sorry, where all else can they buy this?
Amazon most. Right now it's Amazon and Barnes & Noble website as well. Not in stores yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It was such a pleasure.
It's awesome. Pleasure's all mine.
Yeah.
Again, thank you.
All right, guys, that's it for tonight. You can follow us at TomGirl TV, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.